Hi.
Hi.
Earlier this year, the former government ignored recommendations for streaming companies to spend 20% of their Australian revenue on local content, announcing a 5% target instead. Tony Burke, will you be recommending that 20% of the streaming services' Australian revenue be invested in new Australian content? And if so, would you support 20% of that sum going to children's TV?
To me?
Yeah.
We haven't made a decision on the number. It's going to be part of the cultural policy review, which is this year. Like, it's not putting it off into the never, never. I do believe 5% was too low. And I do have a really strong view that the reason we have quotas is because whether it's on radio or on TV, it's because of the relationship between what's coming from the screen or the speaker and the person listening. It's not because whether it's coming through bandwidth versus the internet. And at the moment, we've allowed this complete shift to happen as to how people receive their content. And it's happening in a world where you don't have the minimum standards that you would have if they were receiving it anywhere else. That needs to be fixed. The longer we leave it, and we've now had nearly a decade where it was left, the longer we leave it, the harder it is to do.
Yeah. Adam, can I get your view on that as a content maker? Do you have a view on this?
I think we need pride in Australian-made content. You know, like I said, we are now in Australian-made. We look at manufacturing industries and we go, yes, I'm going to buy, you know, an Australian frying pan, or I'm going to buy an Australian-made chopping board. And that is a fabulous thing. That there is so much money that we put back into our economy by doing that. And from a consumer level, I think we need to have that pride in Australian content too. I love watching Australian television. I love watching Australian movies. I love listening to Australian music. What the number is, what the politicians decide the number is for the streaming services, that's up to them. You know, I don't know whether 10% or 15% or 20% is going to make the biggest difference.
But is the number enough? I mean, because don't you need some sort of requirement about what it is actually that you might make? You know, because some content quotas are reached here in Australia by, you know, content that not everyone regards as necessarily, you know, the new Game of Thrones or some brilliant new drama.
You can't be judgmental about somebody's content. You know, there's an audience for it, and somebody's going to watch it. I don't mind if it's, you know, if we're not investing in the next Bluey, we'll be investing in the next Mad Max. You know, like it's all valuable art. Everybody's art is valuable in that respect.
Well, let me come to the previous minister. The French government's just finalised a new framework that means that global video streaming on demand platforms are going to have to invest 20% of their French revenues into local production, and that's split 80-20 between TV and theatrical films. That means that Netflix alone is going to invest 200 million euros this year and 40 million to theatrical feature films. Was it a mistake not to get on board and to put in place a similar regulatory framework here?
Well, far from not getting on board, what we did in government was went through a process to look carefully at this issue, hear the views of all the stakeholders, and we arrived at a model where we said that there would be a formal reporting requirement on the percentage of the Australian revenue that was being spent on Australian content. So the first thing you need to do is put that reporting requirement in place, and then the mechanism we proposed was that... You don't have
to go through that. You can actually just go straight to a quota requirement.
Well, you do have to, because you have to know how much they're actually spending in Australia. They won't tell you unless you formally ask them. So yes, you do have to do it. And so that's... We have worked through this process. It's uncontentious that there needs to be Australian content on streaming services. Yes, just as there's Australian content on free-to-air television. So we've gone through a process. We had a set of recommendations ready to go. That'll now be a matter for the new government, and they'll need to work through those issues. There's some significant technical issues, what constitutes Australian content, but the basic principle, if the streaming services are making good money in Australia, now over 70% of Australian households now have a streaming service, then yes, the streaming services should be contributing towards Australian content.
I know you're dying to get in here. Just very, very briefly, though, what's been left for you? Is it any good?
Well, I just need to take
just quickly, Tony Burke, if I can.
Yeah. But you tried to cut the Foxtel Australian content in half. You abolished the requirement on free-to-air for children's content. And a decade on, you said, oh, maybe we're about to do something on streaming. In terms of Australian content, this is not a proud record.
Can I just say it's so depressing that we're talking about 5%? As a musician, if you go to Canada, Canadian radio sounds Canadian.
Yeah.
You listen to the radio in Australia, it doesn't sound Australian.
What's the requirement in Canada? Is there a formal...
25%.
Right.
Here,
On radio?
6.25.
I thought it was like 40%.
Well, last I heard it was 25. Maybe it's even
40%.
better. But here, APRA had to fight tooth and nail to get it to 6.25%. When we're talking about dignity as an artist, how depressing is it that we're fighting and you're talking about 5%? I mean, come on, it has to be 25%.
Well, I know Tina Arena has always said that, you know, in order to meet the quota, they play her songs, but they play them at 2 in the morning.
evening.
But that's the thing.
2 in the morning.
So, and they
Hey, they're played.
And they play it between 12, midnight and 5 a.m. And, you know, it's so depressing that our art is so undervalued that we're talking about 5%. We're not talking about 50%, but at least 25, I think, is a real.
So the streaming services can expect there will be some requirement from them?
Radio,
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
I mean,
absolutely.
You're prepared to talk percentages tonight if it's not going to be 5?
No, because decision's not made, so I'm not... But in terms of...
upward of 5?
Yeah, and I've met with them before the election and I said, if we win, this is what we will do.
And
you can expect...
Were they happy to hear that?
They weren't in love with it. They weren't in love with it. But I was saying if we win, we'll be the government of Australia. And if we're the government of Australia, we're going to back Australian content.
And it's been so long since we've had a federal voice actually advocating for our arts. I mean, Keating was the last one, and that's a long time between drinks.
Oh dear, you have to turn out to be a new Paul Keating. Can you do that?
No one ever can. No one ever should try.
I'm sure Paul Fletcher's probably quite happy about that, Paul. Let's go to our next question. It
I'll
comes
take
from...
that as a rhetorical question.
You can probably take it as a comment.